I struggled with anxiety for 25 years, and I thought it was in the rearview mirror. I haven't had a panic attack, a bout of anxiety, anything really, for about 5 years. And boy, I woke up this morning and there it was. And I think the fact that I woke up feeling so anxious, first of all, is really scary. For me, anxiety would always come in the morning, and it feels like dread, and then it immediately for me feels like I can't do this, and the this that I'm referring to is everything. So I want to talk a little bit about what I'm doing to handle my anxiety and about the importance of emotional flexibility. So as you can see, I am up here in Vermont. It's absolutely stunning. No reason to feel anxious up here. And that's another thing about anxiety, is we make ourselves wrong when we feel anxious. And I just did that. So here's why I'm feeling anxious. I came up here with my family because we've been quarantining outside of Boston for 5 weeks, and thankfully everybody's safe and healthy. And we came up to my husband's family's house up here in Vermont, a place that I love, because we thought a change of scenery would be super helpful for our psyche. And we've been here for 2 nights, and I woke up this morning and I felt so far away from my normal life that it scared the hell out of me. You know, I'm physically far away, and it was a reminder of just how far away emotionally I feel from it, and how much I actually am struggling, how I'm struggling to stay focused, how I'm struggling to work on my own, how I'm struggling to work remote, how I'm struggling to not be around so many people. And I think all of that came together and hit me this morning in the form of anxiety. Now, for me, anxiety is really suffocating. It causes me to panic. It makes me want to run. And so here's some things that I've been doing this morning to work through it. First of all, there's 2 ways I'm going to talk about emotional flexibility. One is being flexible with yourself, so that when you feel something that's uncomfortable, that you're flexible enough to give yourself space to feel it, because pushing it down, denying it, making yourself wrong, it's only going to make that negative feeling grow. It's going to make that anxiety eat you alive. And so I recognized that it was there. And what I do is I immediately say something. So my husband was next to me, and I said something to Chris, and he just listened. And he demonstrated emotional flexibility because he didn't make me wrong. He didn't try to fix it. He just let me have my reality, even though it's not what he's feeling. The next thing I did is I just got out a computer and I just started writing and writing and writing and writing and writing and dumping and dumping. And that helped a little bit. And so then I texted 3 friends. I texted Lisa and Gretchen and Mindy, and said, I am really anxious right now, and I'm struggling. And saying that and going back and forth on text with them was a little helpful. And then I started to pace around the house, because that's what anxiety makes me do. I start to feel like a caged animal. And Chris said we should go for a hike. And honestly, the thought of climbing a mountain right now makes me want to die. So I said no. I didn't want to exert anything. I just know I need to move. And so instead, I'm going to go walk down the valley and do this 5-mile loop that I really don't feel like doing. But I know I need to, because I know that anxiety gets stored in my nervous system. It's triggered by my nervous system, that everything right now feels far away from the life that I was living and the life that you were living. And that's why I'm so anxious right now. And so I'm going to move my body and move it out of my body. And then I am going to just practice having emotional flexibility and allowing the feelings to rise and fall and not do anything about it. So if you're experiencing anxiety for the first time, or if your normal anxiety has been jacked way up, or if it's coming back like it is for me, please be patient with yourself. Take deep breaths, get outside and walk, and by all means, be talking to your friends and family about what you're feeling. Because stored in here, it'll eat you alive. But when you start to speak about it and you start to move it through your body, you will move it out of your body and you will feel better. I know in an hour and a half when I'm done with this walk, I will feel 100 times better. And I know if you pick up the phone and call somebody, or you start journaling, or you put on an exercise video and you move, you will move this through your nervous system and you will feel back in control. I promise. I promise. I promise. I can't promise that it won't come back, but I can promise that you can make it disappear by taking those steps. You wake up and it's the middle of the night and your mind is just spinning. You're thinking about everything you need to do, or you're thinking about a worst case scenario, or you suddenly remember something that you had forgotten. Does that ever happen to you? It's been happening a lot to me, where I wake up and I'm like, oh, and then I'm in the darkness. And in the past, when that's happened, I have felt like a pot roast, marinating in fearful thoughts. But I've been using this technique recently that I wanted to share with you because it is extraordinarily effective. If you wake up in the middle of the night and your thoughts are racing, or you're worried, or you're overwhelmed, or maybe it even feels physical, like your heart sort of seizes up, or you feel like that kind of gasp for breath as you wake up, don't lay there. Those thoughts will come, but you do not have to let them go over and over and over again. You don't have to let the anxiety and the heaviness come in. Interrupt it. Quietly take control in that moment. Close your eyes and say, I'm okay. I'm safe. It's gonna be okay. And simply saying those words to yourself is a remarkably effective way to get the worries out of your mind, to slow down your racing heart, and to remind you of a simple truth. It will be okay. And you know how I know it will be okay? Because you're watching this video, which means you have survived the most challenging and hardest days of your life. There's a really powerful concept that I learned from Carrie Lorenz called span of control. And it's being borrowed as a military term, and I'm going to tell you how I've used it, okay, in order to quiet the anxiety, because I don't know about you, but when I start to get anxious about all the uncertainty, I feel my heart race, I feel my mind start to spin, I start to think about what if this, what if that, what if the other thing, what if another thing happens? And that's not helpful. Not only is it not helpful because you can't solve problems when you're in that state, it's not helpful because you start to panic, and that is super scary. And it's also not helpful because it suppresses your immune system. And so it is critical. And that's why every day at noon, we're going to be going live to help you stay connected, to give you a lifeline, to give you tools that you need so that you can deepen your compassion to yourself. You can stay calm. You can stay centered, because you are enough to deal with what's going on. You really are. You have it within you to truly not give in to the fear that this is creating, and to continue to be steady and to trust and to develop the tools that you need inside to be grounded and calm and optimistic as we move through this as a society. And so I'm going to teach you how you do it. And I'm going to reveal what I'm using to do it in real time. And I'm going to share with you what's going on in our family as we are, together in the house and limiting what we're doing. And I want to do this because I want you to turn inward in this time. And so let me go back to my story. I know I'm a little bit all over the place. So I get home, there's nobody here. And in a time of crisis, where do you want to be? With your family. You want to be somewhere safe. And so borrowing this term span of control, what is it? Well, it's a term. Carrie Lorenz happened to be the first F-14 Tomcat pilot in the history of the United States. And she's one of my dear friends. And the military term span of control is this idea that when you're in a crisis, which you're in right now, because there's so much uncertainty, you're okay right now, but there's so much uncertainty out there. In order to calm your anxiety and focus your mind, you've got to narrow your span of control. And the way that I did that for myself is very simple. I want you to pick 3 things today that you need to do that will make you feel safe, and that will make you feel safe regarding your family or safer, and that will make you feel a little bit more prepared for being still or being isolated for the next 3 weeks. Let's just start there, okay? And I want you to write those in the comments. What do you need to do? 3 things in order for you to feel safe, in order for your family to feel a little bit safer, and in order for you to feel like you could be where you are or get to the place you need to get to, so that if you were just sitting there for 3 weeks, you were going to be good, okay? Just focusing on those 3 things was super helpful for me, because it meant I don't need to worry about whether or not they're grounding domestic air travel right now. I don't need to worry about whether or not Walt Disney is closed. I don't need to worry about what's going to happen in May or June. Already my talk show's been canceled. Already I've had numerous speaking events canceled. Already my kids' colleges have been canceled. Already all kinds of stuff has happened. But I don't need to worry about that, and neither do you. You need to worry about what's one step you can take in order to feel safe, what's one step you can take to make your family safe, and what's one step you can do to be prepared. Those 3 things are within your span of control. Again, we don't know if society is prepared, but you can be prepared mentally. So what did I do? First of all, to keep myself safe, I made sure and got to Trader Joe's, and I stocked up, not selfishly, not crazy tons of stuff, but just enough so that if we needed to, be here at the house for up to 3 weeks, that we would be fine. The second thing that I did is I immediately got Chris and Oakley and my daughter in California on planes. They're all flying today and will be home tonight. The third thing that I did is I just connected with my friends to make sure that they were okay. And that's all that's in my span of control right now. Oh, I know the other thing that I did. I connected with my dad and mom, and they were in Florida, and they're now driving back to Michigan. Why? Well, because I think we all feel much better knowing that if something happens and they need to be quarantined or isolated, which I think, honestly, the way that I'm operating, everybody, is when you plan, you're in control. So I'm planning for the United States to be operating the way that Italy is, in a complete lockdown, in order to contain and level this thing out, which is what I think should happen. We should do it sooner rather than later. I'm operating like that because it is lessening my anxiety, because I'm taking control. So knowing that my parents are going home, knowing that my kids are getting back here and my husband and son are getting back here and we've moved up their flights, knowing that I've got enough food without being a greedy stockpiler to get us through the next 3 weeks, knowing that spring is coming, I can now calm down and focus on the opportunity of this. Because I think that this is the one time in your life you will likely go through something like this. And tell me one time that you went through a challenge and it didn't make you stronger. Every single challenge you face in your life makes you a stronger person. And this is going to be exactly the same way. So now that I have a plan, because I've narrowed my span of control to my safety, my family's safety, and getting prepared, now I can focus on how to turn in and be positive and be optimistic and to be centered. And here's the other thing. I think it's really important right now, if you're a single parent or if you're disconnected from your family, I think it's really important to ask out for help. Really important to ask for help right now. I'm sure that there are students in your area that are displaced. I'm sure that there are neighbors that are scared to go to the grocery store. So if you're disconnected from your parents and you're not near them and you can't travel to them, maybe you can call somebody that lives near them to go to the grocery store for them. Maybe you can order something on Amazon and send it to them. There are ways for you to take action, which is what's going to calm you down in order to be prepared and to feel safe. So that's what I'm going to be doing every day at noon. I'm going to feel a lot better when my husband and son and 2 daughters walk in the door tonight. But you need to have perspective that this is going to pass. You need to be patient with everybody that you come in contact with. And once you've handled your safety and your family's safety and you feel that you've prepared yourself to be able to be quiet and to be isolated for 3 or 4 weeks, now you can turn inward and start to look at this as an opportunity. Because I honestly think it is an opportunity. It's an opportunity to not get lost in fear. It's an opportunity to go through this with your spirit and your compassion and your kindness leading you. It's an opportunity for you to deepen your connections with yourself and with your family members and with your friends. It's an opportunity, if you are a small business, to think about innovating. And it's an opportunity for you to do some of those creative projects, to slow down a little bit, to invest in your growth by reading more and by taking on projects and being with your family. And if right now you're scared and you're alone, this is a moment to ask for help. So as we unpack anxiety, Scott, I'm going to talk about a bunch of different things, but I promise we will end up in a place where there's lots of takeaway. So anxiety, first and foremost, everybody, it's a very important thing to have in life. Yes, you heard Mel Robbins say that. Anxiety is really important because all that anxiety is anxiety is an internal alarm system that is hardwired in your nervous system. And that alarm system has one job. The alarm system called anxiety has the job of making you pay attention. That's it. There is some kind of threat, some kind of uncertainty. When anxiety races through your body, you come alive and you go into a state of hyperfocus. Your nervous system switches into your sympathetic nervous system. You immediately go on edge. Your spidey senses come up. Your prefrontal cortex engages. Your heart starts to race. All of this, by the way, tied to evolution to keep you safe. Anxiety is a good thing when there is an actual threat. Yeah. So, for example, let's say, Scott, that you and I are driving down the road and we're chatting up a storm and we're driving, to go do a speech or whatever. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, a semi truck cuts right into our lane and you have to swerve, right, to get out of the way. As that semi truck, Scott, cuts into our lane, what do you feel in your body?
a rush of adrenaline, fear for my life. I need to take immediate control over my safety because that driver doesn't know I'm alive or he wouldn't have cut in my lane.
Yeah, like immediately anxiety rips through your body, and anxiety is serving a purpose. It's sounding the alarm so that you stop talking to me and you pay attention. And all of a sudden your brain takes over, you swerve without even thinking about it, and your heart races, and all the blood runs to your major organs so that you can go into a state of hyperfocus. The reason why people feel nervous or anxious or excited before a test or before a speech is because you're going into a state of hyperfocus. Anxiety, that feeling in your body, is now making you align with what you're about to do so you can focus on it and perform. In the example that I just gave you, anxiety served a purpose. And here's what's interesting. As the truck pulls away and you kind of pull back into your lane, what happens in your body now that the truck is gone and we're driving down the road safely?
In my body or my wife's body?
In your body.
Well, in my body, I would, that anxiety probably stays for a little while, not for an hour, but probably, 45 seconds or so as I begin to calm down and kind of put it into context, and we're safe, we're alive, it's not going to happen again probably immediately. So I probably recover pretty quickly, but there's a lingering effect.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right about the 45 seconds, because it is less than 90 seconds that most people switch from one emotional state to the other when there's intellectual context. So your body starts to slow down and it goes from the on-edge state, alert state, into what's called the parasympathetic state, which is your kind of resting, relaxed state, in about 90 seconds, because your brain sees the truck leave and your brain goes, oh, no threat. The problem for people today, and this is true of everybody on your team, is that we have been living in a heightened state of uncertainty. And every single person on the planet, their nervous system right now is either flipped into the fight or flight mode of feeling on edge, or it's like a trigger, immediately flips into it. And so the normal things that somebody wouldn't stress out, they're super stressed out. And this is important to understand, because I want you to, as a leader, to think about, first, let's talk about work. Assume that most people are at the end of their rope. They're trying the best that they can. They are burning the candle at both ends. They're having a hard time focusing and concentrating. And they're feeling uncertain and on edge. Because even if their work life is good, there's something going on with their kids at college. There's something going on with their kids in the high school. There's something going on with somebody in their family. And, the spike in this sense of anxiety, the spike that we're seeing in terms of people's mental health is extraordinary. And I'm sure you're hearing the same thing from corporations that I'm hearing, which is that the number one concern that people have right now at the highest level in every single company, whether they're publicly traded or they're a small family business, is the well-being of their employees. And so one thing that you can do is, number one, you can encourage people to take time off. Number two, you can consciously, as a leader, make a strategic and intentional decision to move out of the mode that your company has been in for probably 2 years, because there are 3 phases to this pandemic that has impacted every corporation on the planet and every leader on the planet. Phase number 1 was life as it used to be, right? Because when the pandemic first hit, it was sort of like, oh my gosh, what's changing about life as it used to be? What life as it used to be? We're going to go back to the way life used to be. Phase number 2 was full-on crisis. Oh my gosh, we're in this. Yeah. And what you saw is an anxiety response from every single company on the planet, because we had to. Everything got turned upside down. The rules got rewritten overnight. Everybody had to pivot and to innovate and to switch and to innovate. Like, it was incredible. And there was so much amazingness that came out of it. There's going to be, when we look back on this period, this is going to be one of the most rapid periods of innovation and disruption in a very positive way when it comes to business operations, the way that people work, like all kinds of stuff. But one of the disruptions that has been horrible for people is that companies immediately jumped to nonstop video conference calls. And what has happened for human beings who are working hybrid or working remote is that people feel like they need to always be online. And there are lots of companies that also still have a policy 2 years later that your camera is required to be on. This is a horrible thing to be doing to people. And the reason why it's a horrible thing to be doing to people is, number one, it communicates mistrust, which makes somebody who's already stressed out feel even worse. But number two, based on the brain science, here's what we know. If you're on a video conference call and you're staring at yourself, having to stare at yourself activates this part of your brain, Scott. When the prefrontal cortex is engaged, the rate at which you drain the fuel in your brain increases dramatically. The reason why it is so difficult for everybody to be productive right now, for everybody to focus, the reason why people feel more anxious, the reason why people feel more distracted, the reason why people feel like, my gosh, it's 1 o'clock in the afternoon and I feel like I need 3 martinis and a nap. Like I have 4 more hours for the rest of the day or 10. The reason is because you are having to work in an environment that is triggering stress and anxiety and being on edge. Staring at yourself all day on camera is draining the fuel in your brain. And companies reacted so like panic mode that they haven't pulled back yet and stepped into phase 3 of the pandemic, which is, this is the new reality. Let's stop pretending there is some sort of milestone that is out in the future that's going to solve all this. And let's get strategic and let's get intentional about how we're going to work, because everything in the company can't be important or else nothing is. And every meeting can't be 50 people on a Zoom call because nobody can get work done. And we need to go back to getting intentional and strategic about what's important and going back to the basics of making sure people's weekly jobs are aligned with what matters. And we need to allow people and trust them to get their work done. That's one thing that you can do as a leader. Less Zoom calls, more appreciation, and cameras off. That's going to help people a ton when it comes to anxiety at work. The other thing that will help people a ton is triple down on appreciation. What I've figured out in researching the high five habit and having 145,000 people from 91 countries go through a 5-day online challenge that I led about the high five habit. In 5 days, Scott, not a single person reported that this high five habit didn't work. And what I've learned in researching the power of appreciation and developing habits of encouragement is that the most motivating force on the planet is to feel appreciated, to feel like somebody sees you and hears you and actually appreciates you. And I know that you talk about this a lot. People, and we're talking about the Great Resignation, right? And companies make the mistake of thinking that people are leaving organizations because they're looking for better compensation. That's not true. People leave organizations. There was a huge McKinsey study that proved this recently. They leave organizations because they don't feel valued or appreciated, and they don't feel like they belong. And so this should be a giant red flag for every leader out there. You've got the Great Resignation. You've got people really starting to think about what they value and what matters to them. You've got a hybrid work environment where it's going to take more intentionality to make people feel like they belong and to make sure that they feel appreciated. And so you've got to make sure that this is priority number one as you head into this next year, that the focus is on how do I make sure that people's work is getting recognized, that people feel visible, and that I am pointing out all the things they're doing right instead of harping on the thing that they're doing wrong. That is something that you can do that goes way beyond the corporate programs that people put in place. It's the basic blocking and tackling of making sure that everybody that reports to you feels appreciated by you. And it takes work. It takes a lot of work to build that as a muscle as a leader.
How do we quiet that anxiety? Because we all have it, especially, in being in a pandemic or getting out of a pandemic or half and half. People are having a hard time with all of that right now.
Yep.
And including you, me, everybody. What do you tell people, or and this is what I was going to say also, what you give people is actionable. It's not just here, la-di-da. There's things that, I'm sure you're going to say right now, what people can actually do to implement to help with their anxiety, suppress it a little bit, or just deal with it better.
Yeah. It's interesting that you say that, because when I look at all the amazing people that are out there putting content out, writing books, doing shows, I tend to think about the fact that there are people that talk about why, there are people that talk about what, and then there are people that talk about how, and I'm a how. And when it comes to anxiety, which is a really big topic, it's really important before you get to the how to actually understand what anxiety is and what anxiety isn't. And so if we can go down this road, I will be happy to unpack this topic because it's super, super important. So first thing is, anxiety is nothing more than your body and your mind anticipating that something bad is about to happen. So there is a bracing in your body and there is a racing in your mind associated with what might happen, okay? I'm going to give you an example that explains an anxiety response and that's normal, that everybody can relate to. And then we're going to talk about what has become, in my opinion, an epidemic of generalized anxiety, which is the experience of going through your day-to-day life, feeling on edge, like something's about to happen, so your nervous system is dysregulated, and your thoughts are always spinning several steps ahead of you. What if this? What if that? What if the other thing? So just normal anxiety. I'll give you an example of an anxiety response to something. So let's say you and I hop in your car and we drive to the grocery store. And as we are chatting away and talking, all of a sudden somebody swerves into our lane. What do you do?
I panic and I get anxiety, but I freak out or I try to move.
Correct.
Car.
Exactly. That is a normal anxiety response to a very stressful thing.
Right.
Okay. The car's about to hit us. It hasn't hit us yet. So something bad's about to happen. And immediately your nervous system has a big wave of, oh my gosh, go through it. Anxiety response. Okay. The anxiety response, it has a purpose. It is trying to wake you up to pay attention because something's about to happen. So that wave you feel of, oh my gosh, the car, that is got a purpose to protect you, okay? Your thoughts then start scrambling to try to protect you. It's going that way, I gotta pull this way. So you start thinking about the what if that, what if, and you respond, right? Now here's an interesting thing. When the car veers off and we realize we're okay and life goes back to normal, what happens in your body?
I calm down and I'm more normalized.
Yeah.
I'm more equalized.
Yeah, exactly. The threat goes away, and so your body comes down. You switch from what's called the sympathetic, which is the fight or flight, to the parasympathetic nervous system, right?
Right.
And your thoughts don't spin anymore because you're not anticipating that threat.
Right.
That is normal anxiety. It's an alarm system
that
makes you pay attention. The problem is we have been so bombarded by negative news, by uncertainty, by the pandemic, by the changes to our day-to-day life, by the racial injustice that we see on the television playing out, by political polarization, by the isolation. It's too fucking much.
Yeah.
And so what's happened is we have all gotten ourselves in a situation due to the way that life is right now, where you feel like you're about to be hit by a car all the time. There is a nervous system on edge. That's what we call a dysregulated nervous system. And your thoughts are constantly scrambling. Let's take this moment right now. I personally thought we'd be through the pandemic by now.
Yeah, I think most people did.
And we are now in sort of we're 18 months in. I thought the kids would be going back to school. I thought we'd be over the masks. I thought we'd be back to doing big events. I thought that, not that that we have to go back to normal, because there's a lot about the old normal that I don't want to go back to. But I kind of feel like, this experience of, I was in a great relationship. We broke up. I got my heart broken. I worked hard to get through it and get over it. I finally felt like I was okay again. And now he's back and my life is screwed up again, because now I'm head over heels. And then he dumps me again. And now I'm back trying to get over it again. I thought there's an exhaustion to it. And so I'm explaining this in detail because it's not as simple as change your thoughts. It begins with policing your thoughts, because your mind and your nervous system are hardwired together. And so there are two different ways you got to attack anxiety. You got to attack both the way it makes your nervous system go like this, because we know, based on research, if your nervous system is on edge, your prefrontal cortex doesn't function.
Right.
I mean, if somebody were to walk in here and with a gun and try to rob us, would you be able to do a math problem?
I don't think so.
Yeah, of course not, because your nervous system is like, oh my God, blah, blah, blah. So this part of the brain shuts off. So let's talk first. What can you do to settle your body? Okay. I write about this extensively in this new book.
Oh, right. Your new book is called The High Five. Again, that's why The High Five Habit, which is, it's a really good book. You do talk about this a lot. You talk about how we can conquer our negative thoughts, our stress. I'm going to ask you about the 20 gallons of hot water pretty soon, but finish this. And
so basically, you can use something called the vagus nerve. And a tool that I like to talk about is called high-fiving your heart. So you put your hands right here, right like in the center of your chest over your heart. And you say these three words. You say, I'm okay, I'm safe, I'm loved. I'm okay, I'm safe, I'm loved. And when you put your hands here, you are toning and activating what's called the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve runs all the way from your seat to the top of your head, through every major organ, through your vocal cords. And it is the key. It's the switch between your fight or flight state of anxiety and your calm state. And so first things first, you want to develop a practice first thing in the morning, not only of high-fiving yourself in the mirror, which we're going to get to, which is all about self-confidence and self-esteem and self-love and self-worth. But you're also going to wake up every morning, put your hands right here and go, I'm okay, I'm safe, I'm loved. And you're going to say it as many times as you have to, 113, 11 times, 2 times, until you actually feel your body settle down. And you will. You will feel yourself ground back into your body. You will feel something shift. And if you can hear yourself saying those words, I'm okay, I'm safe, I'm loved, it's true in that moment. And by putting your hands right here, this is what activates the vagus nerve. Other things that help you tone the vagus nerve: an ice bath, a hot shower, a hot bath, singing, gurgling, humming, chanting, because it stimulates your vocal cords. And so this is a little tool you can use. I love doing it first thing in the morning, but you can use it anytime you feel anxious to settle yourself back in your body. Then the second tool you're going to use, and this is critical, is you're going to start to interrupt the thoughts that make you feel worried or anxious. And this is really important, because if life in general is not putting you on edge, you will absolutely have a thought today that does. They left me on red. They didn't text back. Oh shit, I'm late for that meeting. I haven't finished that thing. Do they like me? What did I do wrong? I feel like I've done something wrong. Like constantly. Right. And so what you want to do is you can use this other thing that I created called the 5-second rule. When you catch yourself drifting into a thought pattern that just doesn't feel good, you have a choice about whether or not you continue to think that. Count backwards, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That's the 5-second rule. You interrupt this negative thought in 5 seconds flat. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The counting backwards gets your prefrontal cortex engaged. And then you go, I'm not thinking about that. I'm not thinking about that. That's the fastest way to interrupt the thought, because most of the stuff you worry about, you've spent a long time in these thought patterns. And so inserting something new isn't going to work right away. First, you have to interrupt the thought, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm not thinking about that. And then when you get really good at interrupting it, because you might have to do this 143 times in one day.
Wow.
They say that you have 50,000 thoughts a day.
Does this work on everybody though?
Absolutely everybody. Pediatricians around the world are using it in with their patients, little kids, in order to teach them and give them a tool to interrupt these thoughts. In fact, I had an entire wing of a psychiatric inpatient unit in Pennsylvania. All the nurses came when I hosted a daytime talk show, and they said that of all the tools that they hand somebody after an inpatient commit to help them deal, the most effective tool they have is the 5-second rule. Why? Because you can remember it. It's easy to use. And the second you start counting, you interrupt, whether it's negative ideation, suicidal ideation, self-hatred ideation, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm not thinking about that. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm not thinking about that. And so if you do that and just keep interrupting it, what'll start to happen is you'll start to gain self-awareness about that negative dialogue, which creates a little bit of distance. Then you can start to practice new thinking patterns, which I go into in detail in the book, The 5-Second Rule. We have tons of YouTube videos about this. I'm really passionate about this because I struggled with anxiety, was on Zoloft for more than 2 decades.
And are you off of it now?
I'm off Zoloft. It saved my life for sure. I think those kind of drugs are amazing when you find the right one for you. They can turn down the volume on your head. But here's what they don't solve. They don't solve the self-loathing that you feel. That's what the high 5 habit is about. If the 5-second rule, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, helps you interrupt those thoughts so you can teach yourself to stop thinking them, the high 5 habit goes deeper, and it teaches you how to stop hating, criticizing, and doubting yourself, and how to learn as a default to start loving, supporting, and empowering yourself.
So
boom,
check
that out.
That's amazing. Now, did you figure this out on your own by, again, just trial and error, or did you read about this and kind of did you work with like a neuroscientist? Like how did you kind of like come up with
that?
This
Would require
thing?
Planning.
That would require some planning.
No,
it would,
my brand of helping people is, unfortunately, because it's a painful way to learn, it would have been easier to get a PhD, is screw up your own life and then do what you have to do to fix it. And as you stumble upon things that are working for you, and start sharing them. And what I have found, there's this Einstein quote that I love, that if you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it. And I think that life is really complicated, and everything that I share is so simple, it actually sounds corny and dumb. Like my biggest challenge in teaching people the 5-second rule, or now the high 5 habit, is most people are going to hear about it and say, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Yet when I start to unpack the decades of psychological business success, habit, like all kinds of research that proves what is encapsulated in these teeny little simple sticky tools. It's jaw-dropping. You learn how to manage your anxiety. Because I haven't even told you about the 25-year battle with anxiety.
When did that end?
I ended 5 years ago.
You ended it.
Oh yeah, I haven't been on, I was on Zoloft for 2 decades. I haven't had a panic attack, a drug, a bout of anxiety in 5 years.
Why? How?
5-second rule. I haven't even told you like the whole story of this.
Y'all need to go buy this book
so listen
immediately.
to me. So the thing about growth, and do we all have dreams? The way your body's wired is to signal you when fundamental needs aren't being met. So what do you feel in your body if you need water?
Thirsty.
And what do you feel in your body if you need food?
Hungry.
Yeah, and what do you feel if you need connection?
Horny.
Yeah, totally.
That's a bad word. Remember?
I'll tell you what you feel if you're not growing.
It's dated.
You feel stuck.
Yeah.
That is a signal from your body that you're no longer growing.
Shit.
Isn't that cool?
Yes, and I know so many people.
That's it.
We don't have time to, if we're stuck, we jump. It's so, and I think that what you're telling people is to listen, and we've been trying to tell people these words, but that's why Mel is here, not us, because if you do it, it's very hard to know how we do
it.
Well,
this is why there's a disconnect between somebody coming to you and saying, my spouse left me, I'm a single parent, I work a shift job, I'm full of anxiety and I'm stuck, and somebody going, have you tried a painting class? You're like, what in the fuck are you talking about?
What are you talking about?
I'm worried about paying groceries. The reason why
a lot of the advice feels like you don't even comprehend what I'm going through, is because you haven't connected the dots for why this stuff is important. Taking a bath every night and having a tiny self-care ritual that brings you present, which is one of mine too, super important.
Kat thinks it's gross that I lay in myself.
Yeah, I do too.
It's lovely.
I do too. It's super important because you're stopping the hamster wheel, and you're taking a moment. What you're actually doing is you're stimulating the parasympathetic nervous system, which ties into anxiety. And that's super important. Taking a painting class is
I also
important.
feel like for me, the bath and how it ends my day is that even for when I had my babies and I wanted them to go to sleep, I always ended with the warm water and the relaxation to put them into that new space for sleep. So I feel like I'm kind of a baby in that way, but I need to do it to get to the rest.
Yeah. And we do it with drinking, 5 o'clock, I'm moving from work mode or take care of kid mode into relax mode.
Yeah.
So the other reason why I say take a class is because if you feel stuck, you've stopped learning. And so just getting and taking a class, it doesn't matter if it's around flower arranging or if it's around online business.
Or like a free running club at the WM.
Club.
Like even though you've never done it, go join a club.
Yes.
Even if you hate it, go try it.
Go volunteer in a community project. Doing something like that makes you feel like you're growing. You immediately stop feeling so stuck.
And I feel like what we're so lucky in our job that we have somehow created, and I'm sure you too, is we get to meet people we would otherwise never talk to and hear their stories, which expands our mind and makes us feel like we're growing from meeting people. Because if we weren't doing what we were doing and traveling and get to meet people, we'd be at home talking to each other with our kids.
Drop off, pick up, Groundhog Day, right?
There's nothing wrong with that.
No,
if you enjoy it.
Not for us.
You're blowing my mind all kinds, and I know a lot of people at home feel like
you feel like that emoji right now that's like the head is popping out.
I feel like, okay, I'm gonna say this, a lot of people have empty empowerment, and it's something that
What's empty empowerment?
So a 25-year-old we spoke with who was an MMA fighter, and she now does this course called Girls Who Fight, and she was not good at anything, and she basically has brain damage that is not reversed from fighting, and she had to do something.
She should go talk to Dr. Amen, which is who I just came from.
Okay.
Who's the world's leading expert on this, and you can actually repair a damaged brain.
Well, I'm going to tell her, and she was so wise and so raw and not spoken in anything other than being in a world of fighting as a girl and having to create this. And she's like, I go to all these girl conferences trying to understand it, and she's like, it's like empty empowerment. They're all like, go girl,
smart, you're good, you can do this.
And she's like,
they don't teach them how.
No one's teaching them that you need to get uncomfortable and you need to do things that are so hard. So she created a fight. It's called Girls Who Fight, and the girls go and fight and get uncomfortable and understand their body limitations and how strong they are. And she's like, I get nervous of all this empty empowerment. We're shoveling.
There's a lot of horse shit on the internet. That's for sure.
And so you saying
and people that are really young trying to counsel people.
I know. That's scary. Who have
without any life experience.
No life experience.
But hold on a second. So let me just get to the really important thing, because what ended up happening is I ended up writing the book.
Yes.
Came out in 2017. And what's happened is it's now in 32 countries, sold, millions of
all
copies, whatever. All different
translated
in all different languages. But the bigger thing is that when I was, and then of course the speaking career took off. 47 the first year, 80 something the next year, 111 the next year. And I started to notice, because before I go on stage, I have one thing that I say to myself. There is one person in that audience that is not going to commit suicide because of what I say.
It's mind blowing.
And I don't care if there's 27,000 people in that audience or there is 27. That there is one person whose ass is supposed to be in that chair. Because everything that I talk about is changing the mental patterns that are broken.
Right. You're giving them tangible
and
tools
those people
they can
are
take
there
home.
because they need tools.
And so what happened is I started to notice that the book lines were where all of the most amazing conversations were happening. So just 2 years ago, I had 2,000 Instagram followers. I just had somebody start to film everything and put it online.
Yeah.
And the success of the 5-second rule had Audible approach us, so we have done 3 Audible originals for them that we've released in the last 18 months. I'm really proud of one that if you are working, you should check out Work It Out, because it's all about the rules that women need to know in work. Because there's only one behavior change that translates to getting paid more.
What's that?
Visibility.
I was like asking for it.
Visibility.
That's what I thought
You
too.
only get paid for the things people know about, and most women are lousy at marketing their work.
I
They
think
just do
they've
so
been
many
taught
things.
to be quiet.
Correct.
They've been taught.
And
that
then
it's
there
not
was a
cute.
huge book that we did called Take Control, that's all about how, and this gets into the patterns from childhood. If you have experienced trauma, so if you're a survivor of any kind of sexual abuse, if you're the victim of a crime, if you've been deployed, if you were in a household where your parents fought, or you had an alcoholic for a parent, you likely have trauma that is stored in your nervous system. And what happens is you're not aware of the fact that 35 years later, that when your boss comes barreling down the hallway and you immediately cower and you wonder what the fuck, it's your trauma response. And starting to identify those triggers and training your body and your mind to have a different reaction changes your entire fucking life. And so for me with anxiety, I had anxiety as long as I can remember. I got medicated at the age of 21 because I was having debilitating panic attacks. I took Zoloft for 2 decades. It saved my ass. The only time I came off it was when our 21-year-old was born, and I had such severe postpartum depression, like the scary ass kind, where I had to have somebody with me at all times because I could not be trusted to be alone.
Right.
And so when I talk about the mental patterns and the way we torture ourselves, I've lived this nightmare. But what happened when the 5-second rule got published and the TED Talk started exploding and our content started going everywhere is we reached over 2 million people a day. And the stories that come in are mind-blowing. I didn't jump off a bridge. We know of at least 100 people who have not committed suicide or died by suicide because they've used 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 to stop themselves and ask for help. We have veterans organizations using it to help vets with other modalities to reprogram the response.
That's how I get my kids into bed, just so you know.
Really?
Yeah, I don't count out. I count down. I go
Yeah.
5. Make a better decision. 5, 4, 3, 2, and it just
go up. It won't work.
Just anything. I'm like, no, just I'm letting you know this is 5 seconds for you to change your behavior
Awesome.
at this moment. 5, 4, 3, 2, and then by 1 they're fucking running up the stairs. Not
it's
because I
a
threaten them.
positive cue. So
Positive
they're positive and negative cues when it comes to habits. And so what happened is pediatricians are now using this, and therapists. We had a woman come to the talk show and say that she's a psychiatric inpatient nurse in Pennsylvania, and they play our videos for people inpatient. And the one thing that people seem to remember is 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 when they're discharged.
I love it so much.
We didn't realize, like, our Mom Truth book and our videos, but we get prescribed to new moms to
That's
follow
incredible.
us because, and that's exactly
Ooh.
what my
Oh my
doctor.
God.
This is.
Oh, we are? Okay.
Oh,
Give me, can I have 10 minutes? I know
No,
I'll be
there's no
slightly-
rush. This is just cocktails, but I know you guys have
Okay.
to go.
but we didn't realize. But when I had my first baby and I was having a really hard time, my doctor prescribed to me and said, "I need you." And she wrote down the address of the closest mom group and said, "I need you to go there." And I was like, "I don't want to go. I don't want to even leave the house with my baby. I don't want to do this." But there wasn't social media. There wasn't all this stuff. So now a lot of doctors say, "Go follow Kat and Nat. They'll show you a little bit of happiness in this dark time."
Amazing.
You know? So
Amazing.
it's so good. But
So here's how you use it. So for everybody who's now like, how do I use it? How do I
Okay,
use it?
let's
Because
do
I know
this.
we're like coming to the end.
We could be here all night, but anyways, I know
free,
you have to go. It's free.
Which is amazing. You need to understand that, first of all, whatever the thoughts are, if they're not helping you, they're harming you.
yes.
So you don't have to think them. So when a negative thought comes into your mind, just start counting backwards, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And you are telling your mind, I'm not going to think this. Now, if you chronically think negative things, I want you to go through your day and write down all the negative things that you say to yourself. That's number 1. And then number 2 is come up with something else
Alternative.
so that you have it ready to go.
Change the channel.
At 0, you're ready to go. My
Yes.
new positive thing.
And the reason why change the channel is something a lot of pediatricians say,
Oh.
which is why you want to have your go-to thought ready to go. I'll give you one quick example. I used to be terrified of flying. And so the way that you use this is, my negative thought is I'm gonna fucking die. This plane's gonna crash. And so what you do is you use the 5-second rule, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, whenever that thought comes up. Before you get on the plane, come up with what I call an anchor thought. It's a thought that anchors you down in something positive. Okay? So on a plane, I always think about where am I going and what's the first meal I'm going to have.
Oh, love, whoop. That is right up our alley.
Right?
What are we having for lunch?
Right? And so
I like that.
You're on the plane, turbulence hits, your mind goes, oh fuck, I'm going to die. Go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, I'm not thinking about that. And you're like, I am so excited to have that burger at that hotel when I get there, and something crazy will happen. You will have literally interrupted your thoughts, and you will have settled your body.
Yes.
And you'll be back in control.
Yes. That's what we have to do to our children before bed when they start saying negative things, and then we take them to a happy place and go back to this place.
We do the 5 things that you can see, 4 things that you can touch, 3 things that you can hear, 2 things that you can smell, and then I do 1 thing you're grateful for. So what are you
awesome.
ground yourself in gratefulness, because that will often change the dialogue. And I think for people with anxiety with your children, I don't know if you can attest to this, but so many people go to anxiety, and then I remember being told excitement and nervousness and anxiety are the same feeling.
Me.
So now we are telling people that when they feel excited, you're anxious, which is no, because excitement can be a beautiful, wonderful, exciting
So here's
thing.
what you need to know. That comes from a Harvard Medical School study.
Is it true?
It's only 18 months old. It comes from a Harvard Medical School study.
Okay.
It's called Reframing Performance Anxiety. This is all the stuff that I am putting out
Because
there.
excitement, we don't want to be nothing. We want to be happy. And your birthday's tomorrow. My daughter's like, I'm anxious. I'm like, fuck, you're excited. Stop. This is good. You should be excited.
And here's the number one mistake we moms make, and then I gotta hop.
Yeah, we know. Okay, shit, we're gonna steal you.
No, that's okay. You have to stop rescuing them.
Yeah.
It makes the anxiety worse.
Yeah,
agreed.
Because
This is
then
science.
they can't figure it out
This
if you're
is
not
not
there.
3 moms.
No.
Yes, you have to say, I get it. Let's come up with an anchor thought. Let's practice switching your mind. Let's practice like saying we're excited. And I promise you're not going to go through it alone. I promise you we'll figure it out together.
So one of the things, oh my God, you filled this up, Chris? Chris put it to the top. Shit. Okay. So the thing is that there's like there's 3 actual benefits in terms of anxiety. So number 1, every morning when I wake up, I know that I'm going to climb in this when I'm here in Vermont. And I already dread it. How many of you have things that you dread in life? That you think about it and you immediately feel that wave of, oh, I don't want to. So simply knowing that there's something that I'm going to force myself to do that I don't want to do, and feeling that wave of resistance in my body, and having the just willpower to push through it, the personal commitment that I'm going to do it, even though I don't want to, that's breakthrough number 1. Because that same resistance of, oh, I don't want to, is what used to keep me in bed in the morning, feeling anxious and letting my thoughts spiral. So simply just saying to myself, I'm going to freaking do this, even though I don't want to. I'm going to finish my shower with a going cold, even though I don't want to. That's breakthrough number 1. And these are skills that you can use everywhere, everybody. And if you get questions, Chris, just hammer me with them. Breakthrough number 2 is when you actually get dressed and now you're out here. My feet are freezing. There's still snow on the ground. It's probably 40 degrees here. I'm standing here without a jacket on. My husband has on a hat and a vest. And pushing through and climbing in is breakthrough number 2. Breakthrough number 3, when it comes to taking control and healing my trauma and my dysregulated nervous system, and learning that I can, in any situation, flip from a state of stress and anxiety into a state of, okay, I'm okay. Soothing myself. It's a superpower. And so what you're going to witness is you're going to witness me climbing in there. And the second I climb in, it's fucking freezing. And so you're going to see me tense up for real. And then I'm going to blow out the air and submerge down to here. And here's one more thing. A lot of you are asking, but I have Raynaud's, but my hands get cold. I have Raynaud's, which is a circulatory issue that's related to arthritis. I didn't want to try this because I was afraid that my hands would get even worse, that the numbness would get worse. It's actually getting better by safe cold exposure. So I'm going to climb in here. You're going to watch me breathe through this. And then Chris, you can have them ask questions. And I'm going to stay in there for a minute, okay? You don't have to be a superhero. You don't have to do it for 10 minutes. Just simply knowing that you've made, A, the promise to do this and dreading it. That's breakthrough 1. B, stepping into that shower or that tub or stepping outside. That's breakthrough 2. 3, feeling the pressure and the wave of anxiety hit you and breathing through it. That's breakthrough number 3. Every single one of those, you are building the muscle, everybody, of knowing that you can stand in discomfort, you can feel resistance, you can feel waves of anxiety, and you have it within you to get yourself through it. All right, here we go. Yes, I'm dreading this. This is really full. Why did you have to fill this up?
You're just going to press it all out. It's all good.
I've never seen it this full, you guys. Like, my heart's racing. I do this all the time, and every time I go in, I know it's going to suck. That's one of the things about this. You never turn on the cold water in a shower. It feels good. Do we have a question?
So one question is, do you breathe through your nose or your mouth?
I breathe through my nose. I would watch the videos, but I breathe through my nose, 8 seconds, breathe out. But I breathe out of my mouth to get in. Okay, here we go. Because now I'm starting to feel a major wave of anxiety.
Other people are anxious for you.
Anxiety spreads. Anxiety spreads. Okay, okay, here we go. Holy shit. Holy shit. Okay, I feel like... No, it's not warm. It's freezing.
I think everybody is shocked. They have no questions for you at the moment. One question is, where'd you get the barrel? And you can see right here,
Ice Barrel. Okay.
The brand is Ice Barrel. You can find it online. Another question is it easier the longer you're in?
No.
Can't you get a cold from this?
I don't know. I don't know if you can get a cold from it. What I'm experiencing is my hands and my feet are tingling. My skin feels super tingly, like pinpricks all over it.
When in chronic pain, how long do you do this for?
I don't know. I think you need to talk to your doctor.
My understanding is that anything between 2 and 5 minutes is maximum required, because after 5 minutes the value sort of dissipates.
I've actually never been in it longer than 4. I typically stay about 90 seconds. What happens the longer you stay is that you're like, when I first got in, you guys, there was this moment when I was in labor with our first daughter where the contractions were so scary and my heart was racing and my mind started to spin. And I thought, I can't do this, I can't do this, I can't do this, I can't do this. And thankfully, the videos.
Is it hard to calm your breath?
In the beginning it is, but as you noticed, I went from really labored breathing in and out of my nose to signal to my body that I'm okay and to shut my fucking mind off.
How come you are not shivering? That's your breath controlling your body, right?
I'm shivering in the water a little bit. But did you guys notice that like 30 seconds in, I went from like really labored breathing to being pretty calm? I mean, I'm not I'm starting to shake a little bit, but I'm not feeling a wave of anxiety. My heart's not racing. My thoughts are basically at the mountain. Like, look at that view, you guys.
Yes.
And so I'm shaking and I'm cold. I'm really cold, but I'm not scared. And I'm not like, I gotta get out of here, I gotta get out of here, Even saying that made my heart race. I'm gonna get back calm again.
Been in for a while.
Any more questions? 90 seconds is plenty. 90 seconds is enough for me.
Would you have a hot bath now?
I would love one. But I don't need a hot bath.
Is it okay to do a cold shower before bedtime?
Oh my gosh, you get a great night's sleep.
It's the best before bed.
I think a cold shower, honestly, everybody, is harder than this. Because only having my head or my shoulders hit the cold water feels like my pins. Now I'm shaking.
What do you do after? Why don't you show them what you do after when you climb out?
Here we go. Whoa! I feel like we need like a rail because I do feel shaky. Now, you kind of get in a horse stance to get the blood back in here, and then you wave your arms around to get the blood flowing because all the blood went to like my heart and my brain to try to keep me warm. And I'm getting the circulation going again.
Activate.
Now see how red my arms are? That's the blood coming back in. And ironically, I'm kind of warm. Let's go inside because I need to get a towel. Woo! Do you have any other questions? Other questions while I'm soaking wet? Other questions?
How many minutes for a beginner?
I tried to just do for a minute. Not in the shower. For the shower, I did 30 seconds. The first time Chris and I did it, though, you guys, we did it with like in a workshop. So they wanted us to go 90 seconds. But if you have a friend there supporting you, try to go for a minute. And I didn't bring my hands down for a long time, but now I put my hands down and I shove them in between my thighs, which are basically like meat mittens. I just keep them work on there.
There's a lot of questions about can you have a heart attack, and if I had open heart surgery, can I do this?
You have to talk to your doctor, everybody. If you have any concern about your health or your heart or stroke or any kind of health condition, please talk to your doctor, and please do this with somebody who's supervising you, who's been trained in cold exposure therapy, to be safe.
Is it okay to do this daily, like therapy?
Yeah. Like a meditation practice. I literally just did yoga, and then I finish my exercise by going in there for 90 seconds. And I hate it every time, but every time I do it, I literally access this switch inside of me.
Why is your skin red?
I think my skin is red because when you feel waves of anxiety, or you're in a really stressful or fight or flight or emergency situation, your body sounds an alarm, okay? And if your thoughts start to spin, your blood goes to your major organs, to your brain so you can hyper focus and pay attention, and to your heart so that you can run faster. And so when I get out, I believe that my arms are red because the blood is starting to come back and circulate through my body again. And so one of the reasons why this is important is because, again, there are good reasons why you have anxiety and waves of anxiety. When you feel a wave of anxiety before a test, for example, or before a big interview, and you get nervous and you feel that sort of that alarm go through your body, your heart races, your armpits sweat, and you're like focused on everything, it's because right before an interview or right before a test, your body's sounding alarm. Hey, this is important. Pay attention. When I step into that ice cold water, which is literally about 34 degrees, the second you get into cold water, it could be life-threatening. So your body sounds an alarm. Hey, it's important. Pay attention. Do not stay in here long. And so the blood goes from your digestive tract and from your limbs to your heart and to your brain because it's trying to keep you alive. When I started to breathe, and as you watch the video, if you're just joining us now, if you go back, you'll watch me. I get in, I have a like wave of anxiety because I'm in ice cold water. So my body sounds the alarm, get out, this is dangerous. I submerge, and then I breathe myself into a state where I'm telling my body I'm okay. And by breathing in, I go about 8 seconds in through my nose and 8 seconds out through my nose. It also quiets the racing thoughts. When I climbed into that barrel, you guys, my mind was like, get out, get out, get out, get out. This is cold, this is cold, this is cold. Get out, get out, get out, get out, get out. It's sounding the alarm. As long as I'm focused on my breathing, my thoughts aren't racing. It's pretty amazing how this is a technique you can use to take control. And I think even without the cold exposure, when your thoughts are racing, put your hands right here on your vagus nerve. This is an on-off switch between your fight-or-flight nervous system and your parasympathetic nervous system, which is the calm, cool, grounded in your body nervous system. Put your hands right here and just breathe in 8 seconds. And then I usually say 3 sentences. I'm okay, I'm safe, I'm loved. And if you just keep doing that over and over, breathing in and breathing out to interrupt the racing thoughts, pressing on the vagus nerve to signal to your body that you want your resting nervous system to flip back on. And if you say, I'm okay, I'm safe, I'm loved, in that moment, it's true. All right, I think that's it. Any other questions?
How's the Raynaud's when you get out?
Normally when I grocery shop, my hands turn white. And my Raynaud's has gotten better because of this. I never would have believed it. I'm the kind of person that literally, guys, when I reach in and grab French fries out of the freezer at the supermarket and I pull it out, my fingertips are numb. When I hike or ski, my toes are white. I was just in 34-degree water and they're red. They're not white.
Will you take a hot shower now?
Probably, just to rinse off quickly and get into the day.
But there's no value or need necessarily, or that's not part of the practice?
I don't know. I honestly don't know. I mean, you feel warm and you get this like adrenaline rush. If you've ever jumped in cold water, I grew up on Lake Michigan in Western Michigan, and they used to cut a hole in the ice and do these polar plunges for charity. When you jump into cold water, your whole body's like, woo! And so you get this like adrenaline rush. And so I wouldn't need to, but I just kind of want to rinse myself off. That's all.
I think the last question that has come up a lot probably for people in warm climates is how do you prepare the ice?
Well, what you could do is just run your bathtub to cold. And if you want to like make it really, really ice, just buy a bag of ice at the gas station and throw it in there. But honestly, just freaking tap water that's cold is cold enough. And you'll be surprised. And in your nose and out your nose. And final thing, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a therapist. I'm a woman on a mission to literally live an amazing life, to stop feeling such sadness and negativity and heaviness in my mind and my body, and to really experience more joy and ease. And I'm just sharing everything that's working for me, everything that I'm learning as I research, as I experiment with you, in the hopes that I can save you some of the heartache and headache that I have caused myself because I didn't know any better. It's so easy to catch somebody's anxiety. And so I wanted you, Chris, to address some of these questions, because the first question was, do you ever catch my anxiety when I get anxious?
No.
Break down what you do. If I start getting anxious, like I did on Sunday, or I have throughout our 24-year marriage, what do you do? Because you have this superpower of being able to remain calm. And the thing that I find the most validating is, even though you don't feel anxious,
you are able to validate my reality of being anxious, even though you're not in the same reality.
Touch is huge, right?
What do you mean touch?
Meaning being able to hold your hand or being close and upfront and personal to what you're experiencing, just pulling what you're feeling out of your mouth. Like that act of inviting you to describe what's going on, to give detail to it, and to almost not let up, to keep like pulling a thread, like what else is going on? What else is there? What else are you feeling? And I think maybe part of the reason why I don't get triggered by it in that moment is because I've seen it work so effectively that once you get it all out,
It's like barfing.
it dissipates. It may not just extinguish itself, but it will go away.
So technique number 1 is to give somebody a hug or hold their hand, center them with physical touch.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sit up close in front of them. Make sure that you have the as much eye contact as you can have physically with that person.
And then the second thing you do is give people the questions that you might start asking the person in your life that's feeling anxious.
Well, I would start with, tell me about your anxiety right now. What are you feeling? What's happening? Not only physically in your body, but of course emotionally. I mean, those are the two main pillars.
And then you keep going and anything else. And he does that over until I'm literally like the tank is completely empty. You know what else I've noticed, and I think this is a really important thing, is that you don't respond to what comes out of my mouth.
No answers. You cannot provide any direction or guidance or go for the solve.
Why?
Because there is no solve, particularly when you're in the acute moment. There is nothing is going to resolve that right there and then, even if you have the most best, idea ever.
What is it that you've observed when you get somebody back to zero and in the moment? What do you observe in the person?
People coming back to right now, and how that is in and of itself is such a powerful grounding mechanism. When you're right here, you're out of your head. You're not thinking about yesterday or tomorrow or wherever the source of that anxiety may be coming from. You're present to your physical space and surroundings, and that, I think, I know it has a profound effect on calming it, not necessarily extinguishing it, but certainly calming it.
I think that's your superpower. I really do. Like, you are the most grounded, calm person in my life. I wonder if it's the years of having a meditation practice and being a practicing Buddhist that has trained that skill in you.
I've never sat down to think about where it comes from necessarily, but yes, in Buddhist tradition or practices, completely just being in observance and the act of deep listening, not just, opening your ears, but really listening for what is being said is totally, that's right up a Buddhist alley for sure.
Wow. Anxiety, if this is the first time you're thinking about it, anxiety is what happens when you are worrying about something in the future that makes you feel uncertain or makes you feel like you're going to lose control. That's it. Anxiety is when you start worrying about things in the future that make you feel uncertain or make you feel like you're about to lose control, and you start to get a stomachache, or you start to feel tightness in your throat, or you start to shake your hands, or you start to have your heart race, or you start to have sweaty palms. Your body starts to get agitated because you're really busy worrying about the test tomorrow.
You're really busy worrying about whether or not you're going to throw up. You're really busy worrying about that sleepover and whether or not it's going to go okay. You're really busy worrying about whether or not your friends are going to talk to you when you walk into school today. Or you're busy worrying that something might happen to your parents. Why did I give you those examples? There was a specific reason why. The top worries that kids 12 and under have are, number one, throwing up. Now, why would throwing up cause kids anxiety? Because as an adult, you've probably done it a bunch. And so you know, you throw up, it's over, it sucks, but that's it. There's no sense getting yourself worked up about it. But for kids, this is the number one thing that kids are afraid of, because it is an enormous loss of control when it happens. And it scares a lot of kids to have that happening to them because their brains aren't matured and they don't understand that it's just a moment. So they're not actually worried about the throwing up. They're having anxiety because they're thinking that it could happen at some point, and that makes their body feel weird. And then, of course, because their body feels weird, it makes them certain that it's coming. I mean, kids can actually, I have a son that actually made himself throw up because he got so worked up thinking that he might, that he caused himself to. This is a true story. Absolutely true story. So I have lived this. Being worried about you dying, major cause of worry for kids. They think about it. And if they think about it too much and they don't have a process and a plan around how to live with that very normal fear, it will turn into anxiety. The social pressures of being accepted, going to a sleepover and being worried about what's going to happen because you've never been to the house before. You don't really like dogs and they have one. Your friend's dad kind of scares you. What time are we going to go to bed? You see, there's a lot of uncertainty that we adults don't think about when it relates to sleepovers at new friends' houses that your kids are worrying about. And if they stay up here and they start worrying about all the uncertainty, it's going to cause their body to start to freak out. And then the whole thing starts to spiral. And next thing they don't want to go, or they get there and they're on edge and they need to come home. Again, we've had that situation in our family too, where the inability to tolerate the uncertainty of something that's supposed to be fun. When am I going to bed? What are we going to eat? Will I throw up while I'm there? Are they going to like me? What are their parents like? What TV are we going to watch? What time are you picking me up in the morning? All of those unanswered questions and the inability to tolerate the uncertainty of that triggers the anxiety in your kids. This is what's happening in their brains. The rejection of friends. You know, the group dynamics of kids, particularly in middle school, brutal. You couldn't pay me millions of dollars to go back to middle school at this point. But your kids are walking into it every day and they're worrying about whether or not they're being accepted because every moment in school is a moment of uncertainty about whether or not you're going to get the answer right, whether or not people are going to laugh, whether or not you're wearing the right things. And so again, these are all the things that trigger your child to worry because they are racked with situations that cause uncertainty and that make our kids feel like they might lose control. Now, here's the major mistake that you and I make as parents. When our kids start to worry, or when our kids start to feel anxious, which is the agitation in their body, you know what you and I immediately do? We immediately try to fix it. We swoop right in and we start to either say, you're going to be okay, and we assure them, because we're trying to fix it, right? We're trying to make the worry go away. We say, oh, well, this is going to happen, and that's going to happen, and this is going to happen. And so we answer all their questions, and we start to put in all kinds of certainty for them. And that is the exact opposite thing that you and I should be doing. And it's not our fault. We've kind of been doing it forever, haven't we? I mean, we're always worried about our kids. And so we put up gates at the top of stairs so that they don't fall down. We've got child locks on caps so that they don't eat anything. We stopped buying the Tide Pods because we didn't want them to choke on it. Like, as parents, we're constantly anticipating things that could go wrong. We're putting in controls. And so it is natural for you and me to jump into fix-it mode. If you want to get your kid to move beyond the grip of anxiety, you have to understand how your behavior is contributing to the anxiety itself. See, one of the things that I believe about anxiety is the reason why we develop it and the reason why we keep it around is because it works. I mean, if your kid is anxious and they start freaking out, they don't have to go to school. So all of a sudden, that situation that they felt uncomfortable around, they've now gained control because the anxiety worked. You swooped in, you fixed it, you said, that's okay, you don't have to go. And the problem with doing this is that we might be managing the momentary breakdown, but we are not teaching our kids a critical skill in life, and that is the ability to tolerate not knowing, and the ability in the face of not knowing to assure yourself that no matter what, you'll figure it out. That is one of the most critical things that you could teach your kids. The self-reliance, the resiliency, the courage, and the confidence to know that even though I feel a little nervous and even though I don't have all the answers, I can trust that I can figure it out. And so that's the kind of biggest picture, that I want you to switch your mind from thinking you got to fix this for your kids. And that's us buying into the anxiety. And realize that when anxiety is present, it means that your child, my child, can't cope with uncertainty. And now as a parent, it's my job to teach them how. Which brings me to what you're going to do. So it's a process to do this. And it's going to require you to change how you relate to their anxiety. Because if you're guilty of trying to fix it just like I am, you're going to have to change that. When your child starts feeling very anxious about something or getting worried about puking or worried about the test or worried, in my case, I'm dealing with this right now with our teenager who has a massive audition. Are we off? Are we over?
No, we're good.
Okay. I'm sorry. We're at our offices in a conference room we've reserved and people were gathering. My daughter has a massive audition this weekend. And she's starting to get nervous. And why shouldn't she? I mean, this is a really big deal. She should be excited, but she's about to do something huge. And so, of course, that's going to be natural. I can't buy into it. Because if I buy into it, I'm going to make it worse. Because I'm going to try to fix her nerves. I need to validate. This is advice number one. Always validate where your kid is. Always. I get that you're nervous. I get that you are feeling anxious about this. I get that your stomach hurts. I get that you are doing all kinds of X, Y, and Z, and you have a right to be. Hold on one second. Are we good?
Oh, yeah. I'm not sure if there's another.
Sorry, we might be getting kicked out of our conference room in case we'll mobilize. So number one, validate. You have to validate where they're at, because part of the problem is our normal reaction is to go into fix-it mode, which completely jumps over them feeling like that you don't even get the feelings that they're feeling. The second thing that we do is we go, calm down, I'll help you fix this. And saying calm down, that's the worst thing that you could possibly do. Because when you say calm down to a child that's worried or anxious, what you're actually saying is, your worries don't matter to me. Your worries are silly. Your worries aren't valid. And so the last thing that you should ever say is calm down, because it sends the exact opposite message of what you want. So number one, validate. Totally get that you're nervous. I know that this is important to you. Tell you what, we're going to work together to make a plan. That is the number one word you want to say. Plan, plan, plan. Because when it comes to anxiety, when it comes to worries about the future, think about this for a minute. They're getting triggered by the fact that things are uncertain. They're getting triggered by the fact that, in my case this weekend, my daughter doesn't know how her audition's going to go. Your child's getting triggered by the fact that they don't know how the test is going to go. And so what you want to do is teach your child that in moments of uncertainty, the solution is not to panic, it's to plan. And that's where your skills come in. So here's what you're going to do. What I want you to do today is I want you to sit down with your son or daughter, and I want you to go through and identify all the things that trigger them to start worrying. All of the things that trigger them to feel anxious about something. Is it a friend situation? Is it a tryout situation like my daughter has this weekend? Is it fear of throwing up at school? What is the thing that your child is worrying about? And if they're just worried about school, break it down further. You guide them through the process of taking this big thing, which is uncertainty and not knowing, and breaking it down into what exactly are you concerned about. The next thing that you're going to do, once you identify the triggers and you get them to describe the situation that they're worrying about, is you're going to come up with a plan. This is critical, okay? So let me give you some examples of it. A plan might be, we used to do this with our son, Oakley. A plan might be, okay, you're nervous about this sleepover. You're nervous because you've never been to the house before. You're nervous because they have 5 or 6 dogs and you don't know what that's going to be like. You're nervous because you don't know what time they're going to go to bed. You're nervous because you don't know what you're going to have for dinner. And you're nervous about that because you're nervous that if it triggers something in your throat, you might throw up. And you're nervous that you're not going to be able to sleep through the middle of the night. You're nervous that if you wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning, you're not going to know what to do and you're going to get scared. Like, you will be shocked when you start to actually ask your kids questions. Okay, and what else? What else? Oh, yeah, okay, I totally get that. I get that that worries you. What else? Remember, you're going to ask them, validate. Ask them, validate. Now that you have all the things that they're worried about, come up with a plan. This is called A-B planning. When you come up with a A-B plan, you are, based on the research, 67% more likely to be successful with your plan. And one of the cool things about kids and anxiety is that when you have pre-planned what they're going to do in the event one of these things that they're worried about happens, since you've pre-planned what they're going to do, guess what you've removed? The uncertainty. It works like magic. Okay, great. So you're worried about dinner. What do you think we could do in order to remove the worry? Oh, I don't know. Well, do you think you could text your friend and ask them what they're having for dinner? Is there something you're concerned that they're serving? Because if you're concerned that they're serving something, we can pack you something to eat if you don't like it. Is that a plan that makes you feel better? Yep, it sure does. What are you going to do at 2 o'clock in the morning if you wake up and you want to come home? I'll tell you what, you're going to call me. Well, why does that worry you? Well, I'm worried you won't hear it. Okay, well, let me show you. What kind of plan can we come up with that will give you control over a situation that you're worried about? Oh, you're going to leave your phone in your bedroom. I'm turning on the ringer, so I trust that it's going to happen. Dad's phone is going to be on. These are all planning tools that remove uncertainty. And it's also super valuable because you are teaching your child the critical skill of learning how to tolerate something that you're uncertain about, to not get triggered, and instead to make a plan so that you can live with the uncertainty and you can create control in ways that is healthy instead of having a panic attack, which makes everybody else around you try to control what's happening. Do you see how this works? I mean, it's going to take planning on your part, and it's going to take you and parenting in a different way. And, you know, look, I've been doing this with my own anxiety for more than 2 decades. I have 2 kids in particular that have pretty consistent issues related to anxiety. And just like Mindset Reset, it's not an event, it's a process. And the things that tripped up my son and made him anxious and worried when he was 9, we've now used what I'm telling you. I've validated it, we've gone through, we've broken things down, we've made a plan, we've even practiced the plan. He used to be terrified of getting on elevators, so we came up with a plan for what would happen if we were ever in one that broke down, and we practiced the plan. And we got on elevators together. And we even went and talked to somebody at the fire department about what happens when elevators... I mean, you can dismantle anxiety through the process of validating the worry, identifying what triggers the uncertainty, and making a plan and practicing it. And in fact, it's really the only way that works. And so the cool thing is that you're teaching your kids a skill that they can apply to anything. Oakley's anxiety has basically all but disappeared. And my daughter Kendall's anxiety only comes up when there are very acute situations of high stakes, like the one that we're facing right now.
So in just a second, I'm going to take some questions from you, but I want to jump in and talk a little bit about how you tweak this for teens, because your teens are probably not going to sit down with you and go through their day and unpack everything that makes them anxious. If they do, that's fantastic, and you should use the exact same process that I just outlined for younger kids. But if your teens are full-on anxiety-ridden, most of it is triggered by social stuff with their friends. Most of it is triggered by the dynamic that you and I don't even understand, that has become so much more consuming, because a couple things about teenagers that I want you to understand that are going on at the same time. Number one, you have to understand that teenagers are, what's a good word for a human being in progress? So it's sort of like a half-built house. You know what I'm saying? They're like a house that's been framed, okay? And we've got the Tyvek up, but we have not finished it yet. Your kids' brains are under development, so their ability to do complex processing or to make strategic, measured decisions, not developed yet. Boys in particular, their brain structure is very different than girls. They are more likely to take stupid risks. They're more likely not to think about the long-term consequences. Both boys and girls are having hormones rage through their systems, which also impact their ability to process things in a way that is rational at times. And then on top of it, throw in these two facts about human behavior. When you are a teenager, you go through a period in your biological development of needing to separate from your parents and to become your own independent person. It is hardwired into the DNA of every human being to go off on your own and define yourself as an individual at this stage in your life. And so if you've noticed an increase in conflict, if you've noticed that your kids push back on you, if you've noticed that your kids are asserting their independence and doing it in ways that are stupid or irrational or annoying, that is just part of the biological process of going from a framed house to figuring out how to furnish the thing and finish it off inside. They are mandated by their DNA to now start to push away from you and to become self-defined instead of defined by their family unit. At the same time, when you're a teenager, the number one important thing to you in terms of social structure is your friends. Your family is no longer the source of safety and stability for you. For most teenagers, they transfer that to their friends, and their friends become their primary group of influence, of importance, and of stability. And the reason why I'm saying that is because you may have an absolutely extraordinary relationship with your kids. I'd like to think that Chris and I do. That does not change the fact that their social standing with their friends right now are way more psychologically impactful than their relationship with you. And since you and I are not in the middle of their social interactions, and also since your teenagers have a phone 24/7, so they don't ever have a break from that social interaction unless you make the break happen, the rise of worry about how you fit in and whether or not that last text bothered somebody and whether or not, this person's mad at you or whether or not you did the right thing or whether or not this person's, it is, I don't even know how to describe it because we didn't grow up this way. The pressure and the worry and the uncertainty and the desire and need to always feel like you're on and available and participating because of the DNA human behavior fact that your friend group is more important than anything right now. It defines who you are. That, in my opinion, has contributed dramatically to the rise in anxiety that we're seeing in teenagers because there's so much uncertainty. Every text you send, most kids are worried about how people are going to read it and whether or not people are going to think it's this or how many likes do you have. It's gotten crazy out of control. So what does that mean? What does that mean? That means that with teenagers in particular, it is essential that you do whatever you can to not get triggered by their anxiety, by their rage,
by their irrational worries, by their pushing back. You know, there's a difference between getting triggered and drawing boundaries between destructive, unsafe, and disrespectful behavior. You can still draw boundaries between their behavior that's destructive, disrespectful, and dangerous, and you should, and you must. But from the day-to-day pushing back, the not sharing, the anxiety, the blowing up about things, this is a time in your life where you got to have a lot of room for that. If you've been following me for a while, you know that procrastination is triggered by stress. So if you also notice that your kids or teenagers are worried about college applications, or they're worried about exams, or they're worried about this audition this weekend, like Kendall is for, you know, this big program that she's applying to at USC, and they're blowing off what they need to do, they're not idiots. They're triggered by stress. This is a form of anxiety that kids are feeling. It's why kids procrastinate, because they feel so much stress right now. So the last thing I want you to do is to be yelling at them. The last thing that I want you to do is swoop in and fix it. The last thing that I want you to do is to take it personally. If your kids are acting out, if they're showing forms of anxiety at home, some therapists I've read and have been told tell me that that's actually a decent sign, because your kids are trying to hold it together outside of your house. And when they come home, they feel safe enough psychologically that they're letting the worst out. They're letting their vulnerabilities show. They're acting out in a way because they know that it's a safe place to do so. Now, it might be irritating as hell for you. It might trigger your own anxiety. It might drive you into fix-it mode. It might, in the case that it has been for Kendall and I, ignite combative behavior between the two of you because you're both seeking control in a situation. Kendall's seeking control over the audition process and the stress she feels around it, and I'm seeking control over Kendall, who, in my opinion, is starting to let her anxiety get the best, and it's a disaster. So with teens, you got to do what I am actively practicing every single day right now. And that is 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, take 5 before you snap or get angry or try to fix it. And I want you to quiet the conversation. And I want you to validate what you observe. You seem really upset. You seem anxious. I know you're worried about the audition. Do you need support? And I want you to ask them what's going on with you. Whether it's rage, whether it's anxiety, whether it's worry, what's going on with you? Because when you quiet things down, you're not stirring the pot. You're not invalidating them by yelling at them or telling them to calm down or fixing it. You're validating where they're at. And then what you're going to do is you're going to quiet and say, what's going on and what can I do? That's it. That's it. And they'll tell you if they need help. And if they tell you nothing and you can't help, keep inquiring. Are you sure? Because you don't seem like yourself. What could I do to really support you right now? Right now. Because what you're trying to do with teens is you need to get them to slow down the emotion so that they can get back to being rational. And from there, you can start the process of breaking things down and helping them come up with a plan. Don't ever create the plan for a teenager. Don't do it. You have to make them come up with the plan because they will not be invested in the plan you come up with, but they will be invested in one that they do. Hey, it's Mel. Thank you so much for being here. If you enjoyed that video, by God, please subscribe because I don't want you to miss a thing. Thank you so much for being here. We've got so much amazing stuff coming. Thank you so much for sending this stuff to your friends and your family. I love you. We create these videos for you. So make sure you subscribe. Mwah.